Coming out stories can be such a mixed bag of things. It can be a horrible story that turns out to be good in the end. It could be an all right story that turns out to be good in the end. It could be all sorts of combinations of things. Mine, I had assumed that everyone already knew, but I get new requests like every couple of months for people being like, what's your coming out story? I'm new to your channel. I've been living under a rock for 5 years. So I guess I'll tell it if people do not know. It is a shitty story that turns out to be good in the end. I'll spoiler alert that for you. I hope it does good. It starts real shit and then it gets less shit. And that's all we can hope for in a coming out story. So let's get to it. PinkBlue is going to have 2 different videos that have kind of coexisting. There's going to be 2 videos that have intersecting parts and elements to the story, because my coming out story is it contains information about how I got away from my abuser, and that is a video that I get asked about a lot as well. I've been asked about making 2 videos a lot. One is my coming out story, and one is how to handle PTSD and get away from an abuser. Or rather, they don't ask how to get away from an abuser, they're just asking for my perspective on what I did. Which is good, because that's what I want from PinkBlue is, I'm not a medical professional, I'm not a mental health professional, I can only give you what's the information that I have, what I did. And then you'll know that. And then maybe it'll be a good thing for you to know. I think so. So I'll try not to go too into the details of the abuse that I went through, because that's going to be its own separate thing. But my abuser is a big part of my coming out story, so that's... I have to mention him. So coming out is an interesting thing, because I've had to come out multiple times. When I found out I was into girls, when I thought I might be gender fluid, when I realized I'm into dudes also. There's so much things. When I was in denial of being a trans dude, and I was, if I plug my ears and I close my eyes, then I could just pretend I'm not trans, and then the problem will just go away. For this specific coming out story, this will be about me being a trans dude, because coming out is just, it's such a, for me at least, it was a roller coaster that I had been on many times, and I was just tired. I didn't want to have to keep coming out. Like, why can't I just exist? I don't want it to be a big deal. Can I just fucking stop it? But it is a thing that you sometimes need to do in this society, because people won't know until you do it and you tell people. And again, this is my personal experience. You don't have to come out to anyone, but this is just my thing, where if I wanted people to see me as a trans dude, I needed to tell people that I was a trans dude. So let's go back years and years ago. God, how old was I? I think I was 22 or 23 years old when I started like hearing shit about gender, and that really struck a chord with me, because by that time I was already wearing men's clothes and stuff, because I was so deeply uncomfortable with myself. And I heard about gender fluidity, and I was like, hey, that sounds like me. I'm gender fluid. Cool. And I just, there was a thought a little further than that, and I just stopped it in its tracks, because that thought would have been like, what if I'm a trans dude? But I was like, nope, I'm not. I don't want to fucking think about that, because I knew that if I was a trans man, my life would get harder. And I didn't want that. So I just cut off the thought and was like, I'm gender fluid, there we go. And I don't mean to imply that gender fluidity is a stepping stone to realizing you're a trans dude or a trans woman. It's not. There are gender fluid people. There are trans men. There are trans women. There's all sorts of. But for me personally, it was a thing where I just didn't want to think about something, so I grappled onto something else. I completely switched over to wearing all men's clothing by that time. I was just, it's made me feel more comfortable, but there was also something that was missing. I was living with my abuser at the time. We had been in, some people know this, some people don't, but I was in a 9-year abusive friendship with someone, and I only got out of it, I think, 2 or 3 years ago. We were making an anime parody together, and we lived in the same house, and I tried to get away from him multiple times, and I don't want to get too into it because that is a separate topic, but, it needs to be said, because it is a part of this story. But we had dated in the past, and I didn't listen to people when they said that he was obsessed with me, that he was just... It's disrespectful to say he was in love with me, because love is unselfish, and the things that he said and he did to me are not things that you do to someone that you love. But he was very obsessed with me, and everyone could see it but me, and I was kind of in denial of it for a very long time. We had dated in the past, and when I figured out that I was into women, by this time, I didn't realize that I was into men until later in my life. Once I transitioned, I didn't, because I wasn't comfortable with men when in my previous body. I wasn't attracted to them in my previous body, if that makes sense, because they treat you a certain way, and that it was icky and bad feeling. So I thought that I was a lesbian at the time. I thought that I was a female person who was into women. So I broke up with him, and he never really got over it. We were still living in close proximity with each other. We were still making this parody. So, he was still in my life. He still had access to my thoughts and my feelings, and I was, we were too codependent on each other, and it was extremely unhealthy. And I came to him when I was 22 or 23, and I said that I think I might be trans, a trans man. I think he was all right with me being gender fluid, even though he didn't really get it or respect it. He doesn't respect like they, them pronouns and shit. Like he's a piece of shit. But when I came to him and said that I was a trans dude, he convinced me to stay in the closet, because he said that the world wasn't ready for trans people. And in reality, we look back on that now and we're like, oh no, he just didn't want to be into men because he was attracted to me. And if he didn't, there's two choices. You could respect me as a man, and then you're still attracted to me. And then it was an insecurity thing. He wanted to keep me in my previous body because he wanted me to be a girl. So I was like, okay, I let him have far too much control over my life. I was very independent before we had met, but then through years of him like creating this codependency in me, I became reliant on him for everything. He controlled my schedule, how often I was gone for conventions, and it got to a weird level where it was basically controlling what I ate and how I dressed, and just things that shouldn't be someone else's decision. And that was one of them. I stayed in my previous body, and I was severely depressed. And I would go to cons and I would get drunk and just like have these heart-to-hearts with people. I think 3 or 4 people who are friends with me at various conventions. We had conversations where I was like, I think I'm a trans dude and I don't want to accept myself. And Mike doesn't want me to be trans. So, and everyone else was very supportive of me. It was only my abuser that was not. I had tried to kill myself once before that, to get away from him, because I had tried to leave him a lot of times before. A lot of times I tried to stop being his friend. I tried to get away from him, and he would scream and cry, and then I'd be like, okay, I'll stay, which sucks. So I tried to kill myself to get away from him. I failed. But then this happened. I was like, I'm not gonna be happy in my body. I tried to kill myself again. Didn't happen. I'm glad. This is a very dark joke, but if I'm gonna be bad at something, at least I'm bad at killing myself. I'm glad for that. If I'm gonna suck at something, at least it's that, because I was very ignorant myself as well. So his transphobia kind of fueled mine, where I didn't want to be trans. I didn't understand. It's interesting because I am my own worst critic. If someone else was trans, I was perfectly fine with it and was like supportive, and I completely understood it. But when it came to myself, I was like, no, I can't be. I can't come out as another thing. And if I'm trans, my life is going to be so fucking hard. I can't do that. I can't. So it kind of it fueled my own, like I said. It was the push that I needed to stay in the closet. Some more time went by, and then I realized I'm a trans dude, and plugging my ears is not going to make it go away. I'm miserable. I'm so sad all the time. I'm uncomfortable, and I need to just admit it to myself. So on June 1st, which was the first day of Pride Month, 2018, I came out publicly on Twitter. I made a video talking about it. It's great. And it's so, gross and bad looking back on my coming out video, because in it, you can, people have told this to me after the abuse, came out. It had its own coming out period. But people were like, you look so sad in the video. Like, you're happy, but you're also sad. And it's because I'm still under my abuser's fucking foot, like I'm still convinced that he's a good person and that he wants the best for me, even though he, didn't. He said horrible, horrible things. He did horrible, horrible things that are very transphobic and very not good. But in the video, I like talk about how he's like he's like my best friend, and like I'm so glad for him. When in reality, he was the one keeping me in the closet and stuff, but I was still trying to protect him at that point because I didn't know better. But we'll get to that. So my abuser still wanted me to voice female characters, so he wouldn't let me go on testosterone therapy because T physically changes your vocal cords. He was like, okay, you can come out, but you can't go on T. And I remember we had this conversation in his bedroom where I was just crying my eyes out, and I was like, please let me go on T, please. Like, I'm so sad all the time. I hate my body. I hate my voice. Please, please, please. And he just screamed at me, and it's a very bad time in my head. He had a lot of anger issues, and that's how he handled a lot of things. So I wasn't going to go on T. I decided that I was going to kill myself for real. That was the third time I was going to just do it. Because, we talked about, I could go on T in like 6 or 7 years when Pokemon Bridged was over, and I couldn't live that long. I was so miserable. So I decided, this was it. And 2 weeks before I was going to do it, my friend Sam Haft, who's a voice actor, he's one of my favorite people, just a really fucking great person. He messaged me and was like, hey, someone dropped out of our Dungeons and Dragons group that we were going to do a podcast on. Would you like to come play Dungeons and Dragons and be on this project with us? And I had wanted to play Dungeons and Dragons forever. It was something that I always wanted to do. And I wanted to do a show of it with, with Mike and Jerry, my two people that I was doing the parody with. But Mike was very against it. We needed good cameras. We needed this, and this before we could do that. So it just kept getting put on the back burner over and over, and we just never did it. And that was one of my regrets. And I was like, you know what? If I'm going to kill myself, I might as well play D&D first. Like, this is one of the things that I've always wanted to do. Okay, sure. Yeah, I'll make this my last hurrah. So I got in contact with the DM was Dash. They got in contact with me through Sam. We met. We started talking about project stuff, and they got me like super jazzed about it. I was very shy at first, but I was like, I kind of want to play a trans character, And I messaged them about it, and they were like, that sounds great. I'd love to do that. Yeah, that sounds wonderful. That's great. And I got to play as this trans dude character named Daxton, and it really opened my eyes to like, maybe I don't have to die. Maybe I can exist. Maybe life doesn't have to be hard, Maybe I can have autonomy over my own body and, not let someone else control that shit. Dash and I actually got close from that, and we started dating. I was over at their place, and my abuser I can point to different parts of every relationship that I've been in the past 9 years, and he has had something to do with me breaking up with that person. And I didn't realize that until afterwards, obviously, but people can tell something is very wrong with the way that him and I interacted. I was over at Dash's place in Brooklyn. I was living in Staten Island at the time with my abuser and Jerry. And Dash could tell something was very off because, I wanted to sleep over at their place, but I was like, hold on, I gotta call, I didn't say my abuser. I'm just trying not to use his name because I don't like to use it. It makes me feel yucky. So let's just say my abuser, but I didn't say that in the actual story. They could tell that I was just, my mood completely changed. I was scared all of a sudden. And I was like, hold on, I gotta, ask my abuser if I can, if I can stay. And they were like, okay, because it was a fairly new relationship, and they didn't want to like butt into my friendship with someone, but they could tell something was weird, and my whole attitude changed. And I called him and was like, hey, I want to stay over. And at this point, I was so scared of him that he didn't even say that I couldn't, but I filled in the blanks because I knew that I was going to get punished for it, even if he didn't actually say no. It was one of those things where he said, no, you can stay, you can stay, whatever, I don't care. But like, that's code for, if you stay, I'm going to scream at you when you get home. I was terrified. So I was like, hey, I feel so bad about this to this day, but I was like, hey, could you drive me back to Staten Island? I can't stay over tonight. And they did, because Dash was so fucking good to me, and I did not treat them well because, I tried to get them to be friends and stuff, and it just wasn't gelling, because turns out a real good person can't be friends with a huge piece of shit. They didn't mesh well together at all. And I don't want to get too far into abusive stuff, because, again, different video. I told you it's going to intersect a lot. Let's skip to, I'm lying in bed with Dash a few months later, and I'm just like super fucking sad. And I'm like, I really want to go on T. I want my body to change. This sucks. And I'm so unhappy all the time. And they could see that I was unhappy all the time. And they were like, well, what can we do to make that happen? And I thought about it, and I was like, well, there's only two real big things. I'm on this project where I'm getting paid a lot of money over the course of the next 3 years to complete this project, and I'm under contract with them. I've already sunk a year into the project, and if my voice changes, I can't do that anymore because I can't voice the characters. And the other thing was Pokemon Bridged, and they were like, if you are so unhappy, I don't want to tell you what to do, but from my perspective, you're always talking about how sad you are. Do these projects make you happy? And I thought about it, and I was like, no, actually, thinking about it, I don't want to voice female characters anymore. It makes me sad. I'm bored. And I realized in that moment that I was bored with acting, something that I love more than anything. How could I be bored of this thing that I want, that I've studied for years and years? And it was true that I was like, fuck, I don't want this. So I talked to the project people, and they were completely understanding. They were like, hell yeah, that's great, And I agreed. I was like, up front, I was like, hey, I will give you back the money that I've made from this project before this, and you can use that to get another actor, And they were like, tight, sounds great, we wish you the best. And they're awesome. Now with my abuser, it became a real big issue because I had always been very submissive and just let them, my abuser, walk all over me and control all of my things about all of my life. Dash was encouraging a confidence in me that my abuser didn't like. I would stand up to him more often now, and that was no good in his head. So in his head, Dash was corrupting me, but I don't want to get too far into that again. I'm going to skip through months and months of back and forth, people telling me that Mike is a shitty person and he's very abusive, and me being like, it's fine. We're going to skip to the end where I was like, it's over. I don't want to be your friend anymore. This sucks. You treat me very bad, and I don't want you in my life. I moved out. I moved in with Dash because I had nowhere to go, and they were nice enough to be like, part of the reason that my abuser had so much control over me is because, and he reminded me of this all the time, was that our finances were so tied together because we made this show together. He convinced me over years and years and years that I was nothing without him, and I believed it. And afterwards, I would come to learn that everyone disliked him, like everyone. There was like no one who actually liked him. And I had been convinced that I needed him, when in reality, it was the complete opposite. So at the time I was like, I don't know where to go. What do I do? Can I survive on my own? I'm not making enough money. And Dash was kind enough to be like, come live with me. We'll make this work. So I moved to Brooklyn, and I basically was like, I wanted to do everything that I couldn't do before, because now that no one was controlling me, I could do whatever I wanted. I could just go out to a restaurant because I wanted to. I could go hang out with friends because I wanted to. And it was so much freedom that I had been denied before. So I went on T. We planned for my top surgery fundraising stream. I got top surgery a couple months later. I got my legal name change a few months later after that. I just did everything that I couldn't do before. And I felt, I mean, even now, I feel so good and confident every day that I am no longer in the closet. I wake up every morning grateful that I took those steps to becoming my most authentic self. And I started running, and I haven't looked back since. Like I've talked about in previous videos, T basically cured a shit ton of my health conditions. I'm no longer like super faint all the time. My depression has basically gone away. Like I went from being suicidal every fucking day to I'm just like, the depression just went away. And I realized the depression was being caused by dysphoria. So when you take away the dysphoria, now I'm just a healthy fucking person. Okay. I still get sad sometimes, but it's very rare. I think only once since I started going on T have I gone like depression. I get sad for periods of time, but like, yeah, my life is a life now. Before I wasn't even living. People treat me how I want to be treated on the streets, meeting new people. Everything is just so much better. Infinitely more better. I can't even describe. My life is so fucking different in all the best ways. Like coming out was the best thing that I ever did. I needed people to help me see that I can be an alive person who is also trans, and now I can stand on my own. And I'm very, very, very everyday fucking grateful to the people who supported me and my friends who helped me get to where I am now, because I needed some help at first realizing the bad things in my life and the toxic traits that I had before, and now I'm a completely different person. But yeah, that's part of my coming out story. I guess it's like that's the shiny, clean version of the coming out story where you don't have to hear all the gritty details about like the abuse and stuff. But yeah, I didn't have parents who oppressed me and kept me in the closet, but I did have a person who did, and they are no longer in my life, and everyone hates him, so it's fine by me. I'll get more into it in the other video, but it was a very weird period in my life where realizing that you don't hardly have to say anything. Everyone just already kind of knew. Because my abuser is not a particularly smart person. He's good at memorizing facts, but he's very unintelligent when it comes to basically everything else. So we would be in public or with friends, and he would be horrible to me in front of them. So they already knew and like disliked him because of that. So when I would go to them and say, hey, Mike and I are no longer friends, I didn't even have to say anything else. They were like, oh, thank God, which is a very freeing feeling that I didn't have to explain that he was transphobic or racist or any of the other horrible shit. That he was just not a good person at all. And I don't know why I didn't see it before people pointed it out to me. But abuse is crazy like that, where someone will just like convince you that they are your whole world and you believe them. And it makes sense because before coming out, I was very insecure. I didn't have confidence. So I needed someone to take control of my life for me and make decisions for me. I didn't want it, but I let it happen. I mean, to a point. There were points, obviously I kept trying to leave him, but that didn't work. Transphobia fuels other transphobia, hate fuels other hates. And it just got out of control to the point where I didn't want to be trans, and then was like, whoop, that doesn't stop it from happening. So, okay. My life is so much better, and that's the happy ending that I think we needed. I know I did. I know I fucking needed a happy ending, because Jesus Christ. I love y'all. You are valid. You are loved. I will see you in the next episode.